Now we're on.
That's
All of that.
It's caucus time. And I'm back.
Mason was so ready to be back that
I shouted at a non-filming camera that
a
it's caucus
non-filming
time.
camera, the audio. Well, no, I've got. Okay, here's what it is. The backup recording was going.
Oh.
So we weren't live yet.
So now you'll have a backup recording.
Now
here.
I have the backup recording.
So it's just for you.
This will be one of these days I may, depending upon demand and tips, you never know, I may release a background footage because I've got at least 3 things saved from you that were hilarious and completely off of this recording, but still recorded.
Yeah,
on the backup.
but I said those things knowing that we were, knowing that we were not on air.
I'm not sure about your high school inner black girl, but you don't remember that one, do you?
She's long gone.
She's long gone. Well, I've got her on record now.
Nobody has any idea what that
Neither
is.
do I.
Yeah.
Neither do you. You're not allowed to do that, by the way. That's terrible.
Do what?
It's cultural appropriation to the max, by the way. Unless you really mean it, and then it's totally, it's totally okay.
I'm happy.
You can't be black. You can just be a girl if you want.
That ties into our subject today
Welcome
pretty
to
well,
Caucus
actually.
Oh my gosh. Okay, backing up. We'll reverse real quick and jump into
as
it.
we dive further into this subject, I think that transracialism is less insane than the big Kahuna trans.
Maybe we can get what's her name? Rachel
Dolezal.
Dolezal. I was like, it starts with a D, but I can't remember what it was. Rachel Dolezal. Maybe we could have her on and talk about transracialism and see what
That would be wild.
An experience. If Matt Walsh can get people who don't know who he is, literally no one knows who we are.
Exactly.
Think of the glorious interviews we could get done. It could be great.
Yeah.
Because we're completely anonymous.
But the thing is, this is kind of a tangent, but like the reason we can get great people like Charles Haywood and Aaron McIntyre on our show and just like send them an email is because the right is much focused on like quality over your credentials and everything.
Yes.
That's why for am I a racist, or what is a racist, or
am I racist?
To kill a racism bird.
To kill a racism bird.
So that's why for that, they had to have all this like big high quality, production and stuff to get their foot in the door with these left-wing academics, because they're all like, they're not there because they're smart. They're there because they played a credential game. The left is all about credentials,
right.
Credentialism. Source, do you have a degree to say that? I have a degree in yada yada yada, which is why I think blah 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 blah, ridiculous opinion. Anyway, so I don't have a degree in anything that I will be talking about today, but I think that my contributions are going to be much better than people who do have degrees in the things we're talking about today, in some cases. Well, let's jump into the.
I was about to say, should we actually welcome people first to the program?
Did we not do that?
No.
Go for it.
You want to talk about tangential? We're off. We're off way into the tangent.
I'm excited to be back.
A tangent of a tangent. Welcome back, everybody. We'll just for the sake of formality, even though you're here, you know what you're here for. Welcome back. Unauthorized Caucus. Mason's return, i.e., is transgenderism the future or the end of humanity?
Transhumanism.
Transhumanism, not transgender. You can tell what I've been talking about this week. Is transhumanism the future or the end of humanity? First of all, I'm glad you're back. I've been looking at a screen, although we had 2 wonderful weeks with Andrew, including cloud seeding, geoengineering. We did not let off the gas on some of the fun topics while you were gone. I'm just sorry that you weren't here. We may need to do Cloud Seed 2.0 to get you in on the conversation, but we can wait until the next super hurricane that the left uses to try to destroy a red state or whatever nonsense we decided was or wasn't real.
I found out that
go watch watch or listen to last week's episode.
Harris campaign is an anagram for hurricane, and they really just tried to like pull that over on us. Like, didn't think we would notice. It's pretty obvious.
Maybe we had that discussion though that you don't want to miss out on. So make sure you go back to last week's episode and find that. But this week, first of all, thank you to our sponsor T-Rex Inc. for making this week possible. As all the weeks, go there, trexinc.com. Caucus 30 is the promo code at trexinc.com. You'll get some cool stuff. They're adding new things to the website all the time. Mugs and apparel. It's great. It's absolutely wonderful. My kids just keep asking me, when are we going to have kid sizes, Dad? I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea. So, T-Rex Inc., when are we going to have kid sizes? No pressure. A little pressure. A little bit of pressure there. But this week, transhumanism. we have discussed very little. You tried to come in and talk to me once, and I threw you out of my office.
That's not
That's
quite what
not
went on.
entirely accurate, but it sounded better that way. So
I think I walked out because you were telling me too much about what you were thinking, and I didn't want to spoil it.
Yeah, that is not true.
See, he was throwing me back into his office. He
You are
was like,
such a punk.
Mason, I want to talk to you about this more. And I was like, Ryan, we got to save it for the air. We got to give the viewers the fresh content. We can't just be rehashing a discussion we already had.
No, no one cares. Anyway, we're moving on from that now. But
Now that you've been exposed.
transhumanism is going to be exposed today. But transhumanism is going to be discussed today. I feel like this is a big topic that gets thrown around a lot by a lot of people that most of us as conservatives follow, but we never hardly have that stop and define this moment. And then as a result, the conversation just kind of spins on. But we're at a point in history now where this could actually mean one of several different things, and to what extent, and this and that and the other. So that's kind of what I hope that we pick apart in this entire conversation today is let's just, we're going back to debate class. Let's define it first, and then kind of a couple of different directions, and then go off into those tangents, because there are plenty of them. So give me a brief definition of transhumanism as you understand it, and then maybe there's a couple of different directions it could go. Just why don't you unpack that one for me?
Well, my problem is that I don't think that there's one way to define it. I think that it describes multiple distinct things.
You have given the correct answer, by the way.
That are contrary to one another.
Yeah, I agree with you. This was a test.
Yeah, so I mean, but overall, the gist of it, the way people understand it, is it's the the colliding of the technological and the biological.
I was going to say that I was about to give my overarching definition of this as best I can find. You won't find it in Britannica or anywhere else because it involves too many things. But the collision of technology and humanity, that's what I was going to say. But you're right there with the technological and, what did you say, biological? That's, yeah.
Well, I think humanity is better because I think the psychological
Correct.
is a part of it too.
So the meeting of technology and humanity, what does that mean? And I think that often those of us in correct conspiracy land who listen to War Room and have followed Bannon and Breitbart for years, the first thing that comes to mind is people who are trying to biologically alter humanity to move into the next phase of evolution or whatever nonsense that they've adopted. But these people who want to essentially cheat death, achieve immortality, achieve superhuman this or that or the other, whatever it is, that's what comes to mind. So whether we're talking about, what is it, androchrome? Is it
adrenochrome?
Adrenochrome.
Yeah.
Whether you're talking about adrenochrome and like people trying to cheat death and all kinds of experimentation, or you're talking about Neuralink chips, thank you Elon, being implanted in the brain, those are, I think generally that kind of that sci-fi big bad evil villain thing is the first thing that pops into our mind. And that is in fact one of the veins of transhumanism. Should we talk about that one first and then we can kind of come back around? Because I have, in my mind, there are three different directions this could go. I'm not sure if you've thought of the third one, but likely you have.
Okay, well give me kind of your rundown on your three different directions, because
okay, fine. So that's direction number one. People who really are trying to use some sort of biological, technological hybrid enhancement for the purpose of cheating death or this or that. Or the other. There. Second definition, things that I would say largely stuff that we have actually achieved. And to your point, whether this is prosthetic limbs or whether it's achievements in modern medicine, there is actually some sort of, I wouldn't even call it biohacking. I would call it modern medicine. We have met a problem with a solution. And that has grown. And sometimes it's a little bit, it's not exactly like we're pursuing superhuman capabilities for the purpose of cheating death, but we have met human inability or again, massive injury or illness. We have met that with technology that can do something else. So stem cell research falls into this one for me. And I'm not, when I say that, I am not talking about embryonic stem cell research and some of the stuff that for a long time bioethicists have had a problem with on the Christian right. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to adult stem cell research where we can actually figure out regeneration stuff, but not weirdo superhuman trying to cheat death immortality, just real medical research. How do we fix affliction or address illness? There's a section there that I would say could technically be defined as transhumanism because you're addressing the the mixture of biology in humanity, biology and technology together. But it's not necessarily bad. Now, I'm sure the big baddies are altruistic and all that. But the third section, and the section that I'm actually very, very interested in, because in my opinion, it is here and now, which these other two are, but just the intersection of humanity itself with technology that's separate from the body, but that alters our perception of the world around us. Now we're into Apple Vision, augmented reality, AI reliance. And this is a world where I'm going to call that transhumanism to an extent for my purposes of definition. Because, you think about this, 50, 60 years ago, and I found a meme for this that actually encompasses pretty well. 50, 60 years ago, say, hey, I'm gonna watch what I say on the phone, otherwise I'm worried the government might wiretap me. And today, hey, wiretap, could you give me a recipe for pancakes? Like, we literally live in a world that is saturated with technology that has invaded and completely overtaken our privacy. From, welcome to my tangent, from blue light itself, and replacing of all of our incandescent light to blue light technology, to the screens that run our lives, or we allow to run our lives, to the smart appliances in our homes. Even if it is technically separate from our bodies, we have allowed technology to literally become something that we're dependent upon, and now people don't want search engines, they want AI and this and that and the other. This, to me, is more of a psychological crutch than a physical, biological crutch. But, your psyche, your mind being a part of our biology, you could argue the point. I think that's an interesting third version of transhumanism that is here and on us now, that so many of us have willingly bought into because smartphone fun.
Yeah.
So there you go. Those are my three directions. What do you think?
Yeah.
You're free to be wrong and tell me that. No, I'm kidding.
Well, I think that broadly I agree with you. I mean, the way I'd been thinking about this, as I told you yesterday, is that I think there are two categorizations of it, which makes human dignity recede, like that which is against human dignity, like privileging technology over humanity, versus that which privileges humanity over technology. And I can dive into that more, but just like an example of each side. So like privileging technology over the human. Okay, let's look at it this way. So there's this British philosopher named Nick Land, who I mentioned a few times in our discussion with Aaron McIntyre, that he's into a lot of different stuff, but political stuff, which we talked about with McIntyre. But he's done a lot of research on, a lot of thinking on accelerationism, technology, the future of technology, et cetera, et cetera. And his prediction is that with the way that society is heading and the way that technology is heading, that technology is going to overcome the human, and like world history will enter into an age of post-humanity, which I don't think he's necessarily saying that that's good or bad. I think he's saying that that's how he thinks it is, and whether or not you think he's correct that that is the direction we are going, I think that that is what one of the strands of transhumanism wants, which is the erasure of fundamental aspects of humanity and replacing them with technology. An example of which would be like, let's say like absolute transgenderism, in which you like use technology both like through gene editing and through like replacing parts of the human with like cyborg stuff to completely erase difference between gender. Like that would be an example of that, which is kind of science fiction-y, but it's conceivable even if we aren't able to do it right now. Whereas on the other side of things, that like increase human dignity is something like a prosthetic limb, or and I think that this is actually a point where we will have disagreement on, is I think you have Neuralink in the wrong category.
Well, no, I wasn't necessarily putting Neuralink in a category.
Okay, I thought you mentioned it with your first category.
No, but I mean like that. Literally, the category I would put that in is the physical merging of biology and technology together. Not necessarily the reason I mentioned that separate from my final category is you put on an Apple headset, you may be directing your psychological self or cognizant self with augmented reality, but this isn't physically attached to you per se. This is a choice you can put away. A Neuralink is something just physically that's implanted.
Yeah, and I don't think the difference between those two things.
I wasn't talking about motive.
Yeah, I don't think the difference between those two things. Yeah, so
that's all I was trying to
you differentiate.
differentiate.
I think you had a good way of like categorizing it, whereas I have kind of like a way of categorizing the vectors of like which way they're
Sure.
going. But I think that's something that complicates the issue that like I think that we have a tendency to stay in the mindset of Cartesian dualism. Like there's the mind and then there's the external world, whereas I don't think those things are as distinct as he made them. And so I think when you're like drawing this line between like it's psychologically attached and biologically attached, I don't think that gulf is very big. I don't think there's much of a gulf there at all because I don't think that I think that the mind, consciousness, and the brain, which are three distinct subjects, but still part of the same, entity, are all part of the human whole, all part of the human body. So, and of course, there's the soul in the mix that can be separated from the human body, and maybe consciousness can too. That's besides the point. My point is that I think these are all connected. So, and I think I mentioned this a couple months ago on Caucus, but I don't think there's very much of a distinction between, having something physically attached to you, having a piece of foreign technology physically attached to you, and the way we carry our iPhone around. Because I think that's as attached psychologically as like something physically attached to you is. I don't think there's a difference between those two things.
Which is why, I mean, I agree with you, and that is why I include that third definition, which I think is not necessarily on the radar for a lot of people, because it is something all of us are participating in, pretty much all of us right now actively. But to your point, I mean, it may not be physically attached to us, although more often than not it actually is. A layer of clothing away, whatever my pocket liner is, but it is in fact psychologically attached to us, and this is, well, yeah, it is here. It's here and it's now. So let me say, this is, this interesting thing about transhumanism. I'll take a moment to just kind of branch over to the side. When it comes to human biology, technology combinations, when it comes to this shift toward AI and a bunch of different things, let me just make a blanket statement here. And this kind of affects some of the rest of the conversation. I don't really, my greatest concern is not necessarily some sort of machine world becoming sentient and taking over. Terminator and Skynet is awesome sci-fi. I don't see that technologically actually as available to us or even in the near future. And frankly, that's not my worry. My worry is the destruction of humanity and morality, the foundations of our existence on this earth, by choice, by adopting these things. It's the degradation of humanity and foundationalism itself. To steal, Chuck Haywood's word. I don't know if I'm allowed to call him Chuck, but I just did. Charles.
Well, that is one of the pillars of foundationalism is technology that is like techno-optimism is one of them, but also rejection of, or it might be a sub pillar, but techno-optimism can't run against human dignity.
Right. So that's more my concern than some sort of sentient machine that takes over. HAL 3000 or whatever it was in recess, when it took over the school and demanded everyone. That's not my issue here.
Yeah.
For the most part, it is the degradation of humanity that I think is the most concerning thing for us to face in this topic.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of the core of the conflict between Elon Musk and Larry Page and their differences in views on AI, which I think that a lot of the human versus technology is subsets of the broader AI conversation of like theorizing about how all of this is going to turn out. But or I think it was Larry Page. It's in Musk's biography by Walter Isaacson, it talks about how when Musk was getting into the AI question, and he was talking to Larry Page, the Google guy. He's the Google guy, right?
Yes.
Larry Page. Yeah. Okay. And Page was saying like, okay, there's a possibility that technology is going to completely replace humanity, that AI is going to be the next step in the evolution of life, if you even want to call it that. And that's the way it's going, and that's fine because it's going to be smarter, and there's some metrics where we can say it's better on. And Elon's response was, no, I don't think that's good. He's speciesist, which is natural, which you should be speciesist. I think if you are privileging something non-human over humanity, there's something wrong with you psychologically, because that's not the way you should operate. It's normal to prefer your species over another species. Same issue with vegans. So his project has been to ensure that the development of AI artificial intelligence alignment is the word they use a lot, which is why he's doing things like Neuralink and why he's working on his own AI so he can have a full grasp of what's going on, and why he's investing so much in machine learning technologies, robots, et cetera, because while being a techno-optimist, I think he nails that part of Haywood's foundationalism, which is protecting the human, the essence of humanity, in the face of technological growth and expansion, which is why Haywood likes Elon Musk so much. I think that's probably part of it. So, because I think Neuralink is a pro-human development. My gut reaction for a while, especially when people were first talking about it, was chip and brain, ugh.
Right.
But the more I've come to understand it, the less weirded out by it I am.
Well, so here enters my great moral quandary over all of these things, any advancement. My question is the good and the bad, you know, hitting the scales and outweighing each other. So fine, the technology itself, take away the ick factor, it just is. Who's behind it? Who's at the controls? Who's going to use it for what? This is my question, does something like this, I have come to the mind that I truly do think that Elon Musk and a lot of the many people like him are looking in a very optimistic, positive, and pro-human way how to make humanity better. Not different, better. Like how to give more tools to people, how to overcome, you know, problems. And I mean, this is I want to cure cancer. It's really altruistic. Here's my question, though. There are many things that, and I have a floating line on this. It's not just a, you know, because I look at it and say, well, it's not that no one should have nukes. Nope. The United States of America should have nuclear weapons, and there are a lot of other nations that shouldn't, period. And I was like, by the way, super side tangent, Trump was on the, what is it, the PJB podcast? The one, Kamala was just on that, wasn't she? Anyway, so the guy started asking him about Iran, and what do you think? Should we go back to a different system? He said, no, I don't think it's our business. I don't think we should meddle. Here's my one rule: they don't get a nuclear weapon. Period. And I was like, oh, there we go. I appreciate how simple this is. No, I'm not interventionalist, but that one you don't get, and I will make sure. So it was just interesting. But anyway, I have a sliding scale on this. It's not that no one should have this. It is too powerful. Well, I would tend to say there probably are some things where I look and go, that just shouldn't be created because it has way too many potential downsides. That's more my issue with Neuralink. It's not that I think Elon Musk is fooling us all, and you know, people of his mindset are coming to trick us all into believing that they have the good of humanity in mind. I really do think that they do, and I really do think that there are some cool possibilities with that kind of technology. My question, though, on something like that, is that just one of the big giant gaping holes of, wow, this could turn sour really fast. We should just not even open the door. Like, leave that door closed because it will become a problem. What's your take on that? Because I know this is, you know, you just went through a pretty good explanation of it and the optimism, techno-optimism, but what about that? What's your take?
So I think that I think it's unrealistic to expect on a long enough time frame that we can leave a door closed technologically. I think that as soon as we have the means to start figuring something out, somebody's going to eventually figure it out. Whether it's in the short term because of international competition over wanting to have dominance in technology spaces, which is what we're seeing right now with AI in the US versus China as they both develop artificial intelligence. But at the same time, you get a long enough time scale, one regime falls apart, another regime takes over in a couple hundred years, and even if the regime has done or society as a whole has done a really good job of keeping the lid on something, keeping something down all the way, that if the technical know-how exists or can exist, somebody's going to do it eventually. So, and I think human cloning is a good example because animal cloning is possible. The thing is, it's an incredibly gruesome affair because many iterations of the cloned animal die in the process of trying to produce the clone.
Even the ones they claim as a success just have Dolly the sheep, when they finally successfully cloned Dolly did not live a long and happy life.
Right.
The successful version, quote unquote, was grotesque,
right,
gruesome, to your point.
Right. And so human cloning then is possible, but the process by which we would do that would require such gruesome and horrific means that we put the lid on it. We regulated it down. We're saying we're not going to do this. Who knows what China's doing? China's probably trying it right now. But in the United States and most of the Western world, we have a blanket prohibition on this, which I think is good because I think that protects human dignity. I don't think it's good to, make multiple iterations of human consciousness that live terrifying and short and gruesome existences just in the name of scientific progress. But I do think that people are going to do that eventually. It's going to happen eventually. So I have somewhat of a fatalistic view of this because I think technology is autonomous to a degree. It doesn't as much rely on human agency to, it's not a question of if human agency will enable it, it's a question of which human agency will enable it and when, because I think it all comes down the pipe eventually, with each new technological discovery. And at the same time, I take McLuhan's view of media and technology that it's evaluating technology. It's not neutral. It's never neutral. You can't look at it like, oh, it's just a tool. It's we have to look at the way it's used. No, you have to evaluate it based on, every possible use by every possible person at every possible time, and that's the only way to properly evaluate technology because it's within it already is contained all of its potentialities. So, asking the question of, who and why and where is it's not just one instance of all of those when evaluating it. We have to evaluate it on every basis of those. Pairing that with the fatalistic conception of technology, it's not so much a question of like, should we do this and who should do this, because that's not a reasonable question to ask, because humans are going to do this when you're looking at any conceivable or like possible technology, and it's going to be done in a bunch of cases which you might like some and might not like others. So the conclusion of that, I think, is that it's more so a question of how are we going to deal with this in the present, and it's tied into the political in that way. What are our political restrictions on technology going to be, and what's realistic for us to do? Because I think it's like my fatalistic view should not be seen as an endorsement of anti-human technological expansion. I just think that that's the tendency that technology has, I think, but I also believe in human agency and our ability to deal with these things as they come up, as we've done with prohibiting cloning. And if there's, and there will be other things,
I find
it's impossible to know what all of the things will be, because
Right.
like the internet was inconceivable.
inconceivable.
Yeah, completely. The motor vehicle,
That
spaceships in space, like
I
that.
didn't understand that, but that reference was for my elder millennials and up. So sorry, go ahead.
I feel like I've seen what that's from, but it's a
Like I said, folks,
generational divide.
it is a generational divide. That reference of was for my elder millennials and up. I'll throw the younger millennials in there. Anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to completely rabbit trail you, but derail you. Let me rabbit trail us though for a moment.
Yeah, no, you go for a little bit.
Well,
Because
I
laid out a lot
actually
of my
have
thoughts
something.
there.
I'm gonna put a proposition down that I don't think you're gonna disagree with, but it may not have been on your radar. I don't know. But before I do that, let me go ahead and let's say thank you to our sponsor in the middle of all of this nuttiness. T-Rex Inc., a good reminder. You see on the screen there's some awesome stuff. If you're listening to the podcast, go over to trexinc.com. You can click on the link in our show notes as well. You'll find it wherever. Use Caucus 30. Great shirts, great hoodies, good mugs. No, there's great mugs too. I have my mug right here, my Join the Revolution mug. Inspired by the show. We have our first inspiration here. So that is something you want to go and do. Make sure you check them out. Say thank you by buying stuff from them. Use our code. Get the biggest discount that they have. And of course, this helps us continue. By the way, you can also I'll put it out there. You can directly support us. There are a number of ways, because we were just talking this week, now that Mason's back and ready to rock and roll. We have a lot of ideas. We would love to grow and expand, because we're at a point in, especially with the election now, 18 days away? I think it is 18 days away from the 2024 election. More than ever before, there's going to be a bigger need to have these conversations, to actually be connected with people who are being thoughtful, because we've got to become thinkers before voters, thinkers before activists, thinkers before everything. And stuff like this is, I find tons of these, and they are invaluable resources to help me think and write down and go look and find. So as we want to grow and talk to other guests, we've got a big lineup coming. You support our sponsors. That's a great way to help support the channel and the podcast here. But then also, if you want, go and subscribe on Substack. Make sure, unauthorizedcaucus.com. Sign up there. You can do it. It's all free. And you get a hold of our show notes when we're done. The podcast comes out every Friday. You can become a paid subscriber if you want and support. And then likewise, if you're watching on Rumble, you can always subscribe or donate there through Rumble. That would just directly go to the program. And like I said, we do this for free, put out all the content, but if you want to support what we're doing because the conversations are valuable to you, we welcome that input financially, and we also welcome your input another way. Just reach out to us and let us know if there's a topic you want to cover. You've got us on social media, or you can email us, unauthorizedcaucus@phyllisschlafly.com. So .com. That's up. But okay,
I will also note that you should
go
subscribe
ahead.
to my Substack, because I will be dropping an essay article probably early next week about a lot of what I've discussed here. So
if you get to ours, if you go to unauthorizedcaucus.com, you can find them down on the lower right-hand side.
the recommendations.
You'll see the recommendations.
Or I'm the
after
co-author on
decision
every.
is. Yeah, and you're the co-author on almost everything. So that's up there too. And there's a lot of good articles that often, if you really want to branch off into a different direction, Mason's going to cover it. But here, let me make a proposal. I will place a supposition in front of you. Here we go. I'm looking for the fancy language. I think that I would posit that a big part of a big part of transhumanism. Let me say it this way, because by the way, I'm realizing one of our streams is down, but I'll look at it in a minute. A big part of transhumanism, I would say we are watching it play out right now in society in front of us, not in an altruistic way, and I would call that transgenderism. Mm-hmm. We are watching the meddling with the biological hacking, or I should say biological destruction. Mm-hmm. And this is not transhumanism for the purpose of, this is kind of like transhumanism the other way. This isn't the elites trying to figure out how to make themselves live forever, or people trying to figure out how to biohack so that they're immortal. This is, I would say, transgenderism is transhumanism as a weapon against humanity itself. Mm-hmm. And you look at some of the surgical, this has been pushed forward as a technological possibility, and yet there is no science or data to back it up that this actually does any of the things that they say it's going to do. Because, one of the biggest lies they always feed is, what's the thing? Would you rather have a dead son or an alive daughter? Would you rather, or fill that around, whatever it is. Because, self-harm inevitably follows along. It leads to self-destruction, self-harm. It leads to suicide if this isn't addressed. So there's all of these moral, nonsensical things that are thrown together as justification for biologically destroying people, essentially, because these are processes, whether it's chemical and hormones or whether it's surgical, these things are irreversible. Like, you can try to undo or redo some of what's been done, but that's just not a reality that can be reversed. Mm-hmm. There's no pause button, go back the other way, it's fine, sorry, we'll go back. No, you're in it now. Mm-hmm. But I look at it, and here's one of what I'm going to put down. I think that this has been very purposefully, this section of transhumanism, this transgender craze, as a social contagion, it has been directed predominantly at women. Mm-hmm. And when I look at that, boy, you want to end humanity or a species, mm-hmm. you take out the only way that we reproduce and replicate. Yeah. And that is through the God-ordained awesome power of women. Because obviously it takes, two to tango when it comes to the world of reproduction. But that right there is, in my mind, a direct attack mm-hmm. that has come against humanity itself. Mm-hmm. Now, is it for the purpose of destroying humanity, or is it for the purpose of winnowing it down to smaller numbers? I don't know. But the depopulists over at the World Economic Forum and all of the globalist headquarters, these are the same people who are pursuing it for themselves. I look at this transgender craze, which we now know as a social contagion. And I have to ask myself, is this the other side of that coin, where we can figure out how to immortalize ourselves, but we can also figure out how to depopulate the peons? What better way than here's one, let's try it and see what happens?
Yeah.
I would put forward that we're watching transhumanism play out in a few different ways, the adoption and pulling of technology to ourselves, but this is another way. What do you think? Am I off base to include that as a part of this?
No, I think you're directly on base, which goes to something else I wanted to talk about. But I also kind of mentioned that earlier with the anti-human direction of transhumanism, it being a conceivable technology to use the integration of technology, like hard technology, into the human body to eliminate gender altogether, which is ridiculous as a prospect. But it's still conceivable that they could attempt to do that. I don't know, and I don't really think that it's as much of a plan coming from on high as you're talking about, but I think it can be very clearly identified as like a continuation of the logic of the Enlightenment, of liberation from all unchosen bonds. We are going to reject patriarchy, we're going to reject hierarchy, and they've written about this too, because I did some research into cyborgism and cyberfeminism, these people that are very into transhumanism and see it as a pathway towards liberation from these unchosen constraints of, being a human being and being a woman and et cetera, et cetera. So there's I'm going to quote this cyberfeminist named Donna Haraway, which cyberfeminism sounds like so cool and so cringe at the same time that it's kind of hilarious. But Donna Haraway states, "The cyborg is a creature in a post-gender world. It has no truck with bisexuality, pre-Oedipal symbiosis, unalienated labor, or other seductions to organic wholeness through a final appropriation of all the powers of the parts into a higher unity. In a sense, the cyborg has no origin story in the Western sense. A final irony, since the cyborg is also the awful apocalyptic telos of the West, escalating domination of abstract individuation and ultimate self untied at last from all dependency, a man in space." So what does that mean? I mean, this is so typical of libtard theory that, okay, let's talk about how we're just going to justify our most base desires and that we hate our parents and that we hate, authority using extremely complicated and puffy and ridiculous language. What she's saying here is that the cyborg, the full integration of like man and machine as one entity rather than as two distinct entities is in the same way that transhumanism is a participation in the logic of emancipation brought about by the Enlightenment, so is this cyborgism, which is a next step, an acceleration of that, if we can use technology to eliminate gender altogether, eliminate all distinctions between human beings, and then we would reach utopia. Everybody would be equal. We would have equality at last. There would be no diversity, ironically, because everybody would be the same, but there would be absolute equality because there would be no distinctions or divisions between human beings whatsoever, because everybody's been integrated with machines to make themselves equal. I'm going to briefly read another passage from another cyber feminist named Kyle Munkitrick, who says, "Transhumanists point to the pinnacle of what it believes humanity could become, where it might be going, and asks, why not, and how did we get here? Cyberfeminists and postmodernists in general look at the abject, the debased, the grotesque, and the marginalized and ask, why is it so? How did this become the fringe? Transhumanism needs cyberfeminism because it functions to expose the way in which defining the human and in turn the transhuman can repress, reject, and otherwise those it claims to help." So, that's caked up with less ridiculous postmodernist jargon, and I appreciate that he's being a little more direct here, although I disagree. And this is from On the Importance on the Importance of Being a Cyborg Feminist, which was originally published in Anarcho-Transhuman issue number 1 back in 2012. So what they're both talking about here is like, okay, it's leftism, plain and simple, using technology to achieve the aims of leftism. We're going to look at everything that's on the outside, everything that's on the fringe, everything that's been deemed, bad or unworthy, et cetera, and we're going to emancipate all of that, emancipate every single possibility of vice and ugliness and degradation, and we're going to bring it to the forefront using technology and integrate it into everybody, which Yeah, it just occurred to me now that that's the same as the logic of democracy by extending behavioral feedback loops, in which you choose your vice and then you vote on the consequences. It's kind of the same thing. This democratization of the human experience through technological integration is your vices are all liberated and everybody has to experience them. So to answer your question, yes.
I was about to say, what I'm hearing is an extremely long and academic version of, yep, I agree.
Yeah, but I think it's
Yes.
important to point that like there are leftist academics that are like, this is what we believe, this is our project. You know?
Yeah, I know, and that's why I look at it and I say, something you said at the very earlier on in your remarks I'm not sure if it's, I think it is very purposeful from at least a few people that this is a way in which to hamstring humanity. Now, is that physically? Is that just you're wasting your time? Are we actually managing to depopulate? I don't know. But it is destroying the foundations, the reality, the legitimacy of humanity itself, which is, and I mean, I'm very much appreciative of the new terminology I've got. Shout out to Jack Posobiec and Joshua Lysick on their book, Joshua Lysick on their book, Unhumans. If you don't have that one, get a copy of it and read it. Don't get an audiobook, get a copy and read it. Trust me, you want this one physically in your library.
And you don't want audiobooks at all.
I agree wholeheartedly. There's a Substack for that, and I know who wrote it. He's right there. He's on the other side.
And yesterday.
Yeah. But no, let me say specifically, I appreciate how the way that they put it is just, when you look at these Marxists, what they are is degrading people to the level of being unhumans. Like this is dialectical materialism. Welcome to it. These are just cogs in the wheel. There's really no such thing as humanity, dignity, morality. This is all there is. So you're boilerplating it down. These people are in fact behaving as if they're not human, and they treat others as if they aren't. Unhuman is a great phrase when you get down to it and you realize, I think there really are people who are looking to relegate those of us, not them, not the powerful, to the level of unhumans. So, just tinker with that, change that. Yes, you can change whether the lie is bought and the useful idiots between us and them, like academics in the leftist world, actually think that this is a good thing, or whether someone's in on it and knows this doesn't work, but it doesn't matter. The point is not that we think it's right and correct, but the point is what we can do with it. I look at all of those and I think that there's a great amount of foresight on at least a few people who specifically know this is one way in which we can confound humanity. I'll say the overarching word is something I'm trying to think of right now while I filibuster with filler words. I don't know. But this is one way in which we distract people.
Yeah.
And keep them satiated and happy, or keep them chasing something they'll never find. And this is where I have my issues with technology too, because it's this helpful tool in my pocket has increasingly become a tool of addiction and distraction, and it's very purposefully done that way from the other side. Not only is that good business, but it makes it easy, because it's good business, for people to take advantage of that. And then, now I think we're reaping the rewards of that electorally. We just have generations of people. Technology generations, I would say, it's even different than like physical generations or even school year generations. Technology generations are just unplugged from what's happening around us, and they don't care to participate in the system, basic civics, go and vote, none of this stuff, because they're just too distracted and apathetic, because they have this entire little world built around them where they can look. They'll even be happy to look at clips of stuff in politics, but that doesn't mean it translates into go and do. Like, those things are erased because of complacency, because we're just distracted. So how can we make this even better? Throw your goggles on, Apple Vision Pro, and you don't even have to leave the couch for it to feel completely even more fun and absorb a whole section of your life and brain to just unplug. Hook me up to the pod and call it the Matrix and we're good to go.
Yeah.
Like, that's the next step kind of thing.
I can't wait.
Well, that's the direction that it really there is a progression, and it's not by accident. I think, however, it is all of these technological progressions, whether it's actual biohacking or it's just technology that we adopt, or if it's transgender social contagion crazes, whatever it is. Yeah. There are people in each of these fields who altruistically think it's a good thing and we're helping to pursue it. There are people in each of these fields who see some maybe good possibility, like on the technology sides, But the problem is the advancement, I know there is someone waiting to take advantage of it. And the way I view the fields, those folks are very successful, far more successful than our reaction to it. There's way more people looking to buy Apple Vision Pro than there are who want a homestead.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not saying that's the ultimate measure of all things, although it's a good one. It's like I look at it and go, ooh, that makes my skin crawl. I want to go homestead soon. For my wife, if she's watching this.
Right, you
soon.
You want to drop out of it completely. And that
Yes.
makes sense.
I mean, not
but
maybe all of it, but take a Starlink.
I would say that I wouldn't say that it's not by accident though, because I think that I think there's a bit of cruel fate to the history of technological progression, in which, you know, somebody has an idea and they kind of get like possessed by this idea until they. I don't know if that possession is merely symbolic or if that's literal, but I think you can read it both ways, and I think there's a lot you can learn from looking at it both ways. But that especially Western civilization's mode of operation, you know, the Faustian spirit drives us to reach the heights, even if it's to our own detriment. And that's what we do. That's the history of the West, you know. So it kind of just is what it is. And but you're certainly right that there are people waiting in the wings to take advantage, but either by, you know, I think a lot of it is by some sort of cruel accident that new technologies emerge, and that, you know, people are somewhat unwillingly made tools in the process of technological expansion, which, you know, that's what technological determinism is. That's what the autonomy of technology is. That's what Jacques Ellul writes about. And I think there's a lot there. But I don't really have anything else to add to the subject.
No, I wouldn't either. I would just say my great worry on the actual technological field side is, you know, because again, I think I've made my point about transgenderism by name being a part of this. At least it should be in our considerations and conversations. But let me throw another thing out. If you want a good phrase to go off and do some research, and you're looking for some of the people who are both warning about this and also participating in it, again, not necessarily speaking to their motives, another phrase I would consider you look at, because we talked about this last week on geoengineering. You look up cloud seeding, you find a lot of conspiracy stuff. You look up climate intervention, you find all the people who are doing cloud seeding but not calling it that. You find the other side of the coin on this and actually see, oh, here's all the research and the papers and all the stuff that I want to prove that it's real. And also, it, instead of just going off into conspiracy land, it shows you the people who are actually doing the things that you think are being done. Likewise, in this, one of the ones that I would look for is discussions around the fourth industrial revolution. That's a set of phrases. In my research for this, I found a lot of people going down. I think that would be the Elon Musk kind of thing. And by the way, I say that, you think of, oh, I know the Industrial Revolution. Well, there were three, I would argue, before us. The first one being the introduction of anything mechanical. Think about the cotton gin and a bunch of things like that. The second being the Industrial Revolution in the 1890s that you and I know, mass production. And then the third, I would argue, happened about 40, 50 years ago. The entrance of
Computers.
Technology and mainframe computing into that world. That was the third industrial revolution. The fourth one is the combination of technology and humanity together in like this stuff that just gets a lot of people exciting. Because I mean, if you think about what's possible with nanotechnology, with 3D printing, with mapping out stuff in the human brain, like that, now we're into what I would call the fourth industrial revolution. That's what I see a lot of the proponents of it and the warners, the people who are calling it a harbinger of death. Like these are the kinds of discussion terms that I found to start looking up, and then it opened a whole new world than actually using the word transhumanism, quote unquote, fourth industrial revolution, and a few other things. Boom, big new sections of research opened up for me. So if you want to do further, that's my closing offerance. Anything else?
Well, I guess my, to kind of put a bow on it with the way I look at it is that I think that transhumanism, people use that term, but it's describing two things, both a pro-human and an anti-human future. And I think that we need to be cognizant of that. And I think that we need to parse that out because as one of our coworkers often emphasizes, the definition of words are important and the way that you use them is important. So we need to be precise and we need to be clear, and this is an issue that there isn't much clarity on, so we hope that we've provided some things to think about, some ways to have a more accurate view of the situation and, you know, see all the moving pieces of this.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of moving pieces there are. I don't think is there anything else we needed to cover in the news this week? I think that's pretty much it.
There was the New York Post hired a lip reader because there was the Obama-Biden video, and Obama says, she's not as strong as me, and Biden said she's not as strong as me, and President Biden, or ex-President Obama agrees that's true.
That's true.
Anyway, that just popped up in my notifications.
Yeah, it's I was looking at that too, and it's we'll see. There's a lot going on. By the way, if you didn't watch, I was expecting my only political commentary for the week. You want to see anything else? You go follow me on Twitter or X or Facebook or, well, I'm not really on Truth Social, Substack, whatever. Follow me there. I'll post more. My one biggie for the week. I expected the pre-taped Brett Baer Fox News interview of Kamala Harris. I expected that to just be a big nothing burger. Mm-hmm. And in truth, he did not hang her like he could have on certain issues out to dry.
Because she kept doing it to herself.
However, that was quite possibly the train wreck nail in the coffin that some of us could have hoped for, or at least part of it, maybe a percentage that I just kind of expected it to be pretty nonchalant. He actually went after her on a few things, and she fumbled worse than usual. Like he got her flustered, and even 60 Minutes, though they edited it all up, even 60 Minutes kind of poked. But the question is, but they were still overly kind and polite, and they let her get away with stuff. And then they edited her answers to make her sound not as stupid as she really apparently is. Fox, I don't know about the editing side of it, although if they were smart, they didn't, because an FCC complaint has been filed against CBS. Did you see that? Someone filed an FCC complaint against CBS for distortion. Distortion. Anyway, last night was pretty horrifically bad. I expected it to be not nearly as bad as it was. So this may just all be, I mean, almost over, except for Christopher Machio coming out and singing Nessun Dorma at Trump's inauguration ball in 2025.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know. We're in wild times.
Go vote. Make sure you have a plan to vote. That's what Ed keeps saying. You know, make a plan. Don't just say, I'm going to vote. Make a plan for you and your friends and your family on when you're going to go, who you're going to go with, and if you haven't already voted.
And vote early and lock that vote in for Trump if you're in one of those states that actually is a thing. Here in Missouri, we have absentee voting, but it's not really, we don't have early voting. Let me say this. This is actually, I think, an important point, and I'll say it now for everyone who's here. I actually had someone ask me that. Hold on, I thought we were against early voting. Blah, 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 blah. Why is everyone pushing early voting? The rationale is a strategic one. Yes, we are. And Phyllis Schlafly, Eagles, has always been. I personally am. You probably are too, but I won't speak for you. I'm against early voting in principle. I'm against having a season of voting. We have election day, not election season. We should, ideally, all as a population, vote all together at the same time with the same amount of information, all of us informed by the same things and dates and times and surprises and whatever, and then that should all be counted up, and it shouldn't be something that runs over the course of days or weeks, let alone then we figure out how to count them, but we're not allowed to start till later. It is all messed up. However, in order to change the system, you have to have a will to change the system. You have to be in charge. There have been times where we've been in charge, but there hasn't been a will to change it. Not enough conservatives inside the Republican majority of some of these states. Other times, we just haven't had charge. You want to get in charge, you have to win. So you look at it and say, I could just sit here and complain that I don't like the system and watch the Democrats use it to beat us, or you go out and use it back but better and beat them at their own game, and then when we're in charge, we can change that. But until we get in charge, we can't change it. So early voting has often been one of the silver bullets of the left, because Democrats are the ones who early vote in big states, and they know that it's the right, it's conservatives who are going to wait to do it, quote unquote, on election day in a traditional manner. Well, guess what? That's when paper ballots run out, machines stop, there's hours and hours of lines. You have a life, you have children, you have people that you care for, you get sick, you can't go. Don't leave it up to that. Otherwise, we're going to see what we saw in Maricopa County 2020, where there's massive lines, places shut down. If people in Maricopa County that are conservatives are running up the early vote tallies, That takes away the surprise early votes that get counted from Democrats because we did it better than them. And that removes their ability to mess with election day systems and know that they are inordinately taking out the vast majority of our vote. That's why you're hearing people like Posobiec and a bunch of others on the ground talk about vote early, vote absentee, whatever it is, lock it in now, because we're using their system against them that we have just rejected on principle. Principally, we're right. It shouldn't be that way. Strategically, use it, destroy them, and then when we're in power, we have a chance to do something about it. I don't like it, but that's the way that it is. And I don't think that that's a compromising thing to say, or you know, this is not a conviction level thing for me. We shouldn't do elections or voting that way. And I do want to change it, but it's not like I'm participating in something immoral by saying, fine, I'll do it that way and beat you at it. It's not like, okay, fine, we'll adopt fill in the blank immoral thing. That's why you're hearing that, in case you wondered. I think that's a good thing to put down. Because I know a lot of people asked, wait a minute, I thought we were against that. We are. That doesn't mean you can't use it to beat them at their own game. So that's all I got.
Bye.
Unauthorizedcaucus.com. Sign up. You get the notes in the podcast tomorrow. TREXinc.com. Caucus30 as your promo code. We'll get you a bunch of cool stuff. And that's it. We'll see you next week, everyone, for another Unauthorized Caucus.
It's caucus time.
It's caucus time.